What's going on, everybody? Flash Jones here, barreling down the rails, right back at you. And in this one, I got another installment on the build series. And in this one, we're taking a look at how to build the Walthers CornerStone double track arched Pratt Truss bridge. So, without further ado, here we go. All right, people, so before we get too far into the weeds on the build here, one thing you may want to do if you're looking to build this is after you get your kit, obviously, as you guys may be able to tell, I did spray paint my set or my kit already, as I typically always do. The kit comes in a gray plastic, and to be honest, it's molded very closely to the same color of spray paint that I typically use. But take everything out of the box, go through it, make sure everything looks good, feels good, and make sure that nothing is damaged, because you do not want to get into this build and mess around and find out that you got stuff missing and or damaged. All right, so with all that out the way, step one in building this arched Pratt Truss bridge here is to glue together your side truss assemblies. So to make this very understandable and comprehensible, you have two side truss assemblies because you have two sides to the bridge. Each side has four pieces. You have two exterior and two interior. Your extra pieces are left 1, right 2, and interior pieces left 3, or I'm sorry, right 3 and left 4. So I got those 4 parts cut out and laid out in front of you. The easiest way to understand the way that Walthers decide to build the bridge is, as you guys can see by looking at this part, I believe this is part 2. This one has a couple holes or mounting slots, if you will. Okay, 1 and 2 are the female sides. They have the holes. Okay, parts 3 and 4 have the pins. 3 and 4 are going to plug into 1 and 2. So to put it in simplistic terms, left and right 1 and 2 are the female sides, and the right 3 and left 4 are the male sides. Once you're done gluing and you're ready to begin to put these pieces together, don't be alarmed by how the bridge and how the side truss assemblies go together. It's designed to overlap other pieces. So 2 pieces are smaller than the other 2, and it's designed that way because it helps to build some strength and rigidity on its own before you get to some of the other finer detail parts. All right, so got the side truss assemblies completed. Now looking at the bottom half of step 1, you can see down there it's talking about some bottom chords and some top chords. That's what we got to do now. So this is going to be one of those places where you're going to want to stop, take your time, and do it right. Okay, reason being is we're talking top chords and bottom chords, right? Essentially gusset plates. So if you remember from the modernized double track truss bridge, when we had to put on those gusset plates, it had to be oriented a certain way, so that way that the bottom X bracing and other parts could attach to it. No different here. It's the same exact boat we're in now. See these pinholes here? You have to make sure that your gusset plates or your bottom chords and your top chords face the same side as your pinholes, because later on when we go to put the deck on, everything has to face the same side. That way your X bracing can attach, that way your deck can attach, and everything faces the right way. Another reason why you want to make sure that you do this part right is because you guys can see how these top chords need to line up with these insertion points on the side of the side truss assembly. If you jack around on this part, your X bracing, which is often referred to as the end struts in the instruction manual, will not line up correctly because the top laterals have to plug into those insertion points and they have to line up with those top chords precisely. All right, now one of the last things I want to just touch on right quick concerning these bottom chords is you see these little bumps here that are on the sides of the bottom chords. When you put them on, you affix them to the side truss assembly. Make sure that those little bumps are at the extreme ends, the far ends of the side truss assembly, because those little bumps are what your bridge shoe is attached to, and you want them obviously to attach on the ends, not in the middle. So make sure that those little bumps are at the far ends of the bridge. All right, people, moving on to step 2. Step 2 is parts 2 and 3 in the instruction manual. In these 2 steps, you have 3 different locations for your lacings. You have upper, lower, and side or end post lacings. Within these 3 different locations for lacings, you have several different sizes, okay? Better yet, I'll just show you what I'm talking about. All right, folks, so as you can see, there is a litany of different size and locations for these different lacing pieces. So this is another area where you're going to want to stop, take your time, and do it right, because you want to make sure that these pieces go where they're destined to go, not where they look like they go. All right, people, so now moving on to step 1 and the deck assembly. Step 1 is going to consist of parts 3 and parts 4 if you're looking at the instruction manual. Now, you may be wondering why I'm kind of playing hopscotch through the instruction manual. And before I get there, I want to explain this right quick. You see this little notch, this little protrusion on the very end of these floor stringers? Be very mindful when cutting these pieces out of the sprue that you do not cut off that little notch and that protrusion, that little end piece. Make sure you leave that on there, because you're going to need that when you go to affix these pieces to the floor beams. They kind of butt up with one another in a way that they will glue together. So make sure you don't cut that off. All right, so back to the hopscotch, right? I built my bridge in such a manner that doesn't go in the chronological order that the instructions call for. And with that being said, I did make a bit of a boo-boo. Now, in the hopes of being hot with you guys, I do not believe that my boo-boo was because I decided to go outside the order of these instructions. I see it very easy that no matter how you do it, whether you do it my way or the way that the instructions call for, you can very easily make the same exact mistake that I did. And for that reason, I believe Walthers needs a lot of help when it comes to depicting and conveying the messages that they have when it comes to their instructions. Side note, those are parts 25, 26, which are your horizontal floor beams. So explaining to you guys exactly what my boo-boo was is I put these floor stringers in backwards. Now here in a moment, I'm going to show you some digitally enhanced photos that depict exactly what you need to do. But it's hard to tell when looking at these instructions straight on with natural eyes. All right, so as you guys can see, I've completely scrapped what I was doing and started all the way over. So what I'm showing you now is some digitally enhanced photos from the instruction manual on what the pieces look like that go together. You can't just look at the instruction manual and pick out these details because it just doesn't show it. So as you guys can see here, looking at the middle of the deck assembly, notice how that little protrusion, that little notch at the very end of the floor stringers, you see how they meet in the middle. Remember back earlier in the video when I was saying be careful when you go to cut these off the sprue, not to cut them off. This is where those pieces come into play. Those pieces butt up on a part number 26 in the middle to connect to one another to make the bridge, to make the deck come together. Now notice here, looking at the opposite ends of 27 and 28, your floor stringers, notice that little opening that is at the opposite end of those stringers. That's where those pieces, 27 and 28, hook into part number 25 at the very ends, the openings of the bridge where your train and your track are going to enter into the bridge. All right, people, so with all that being said, let me depict for you exactly what's going through my mind. Okay, so looking here at the deck, you see kind of how those little notches, they kind of meet right there and the little gaps on parts 26. Notice here, looking at the opposite ends of the deck, where the deck really starts. Notice how pieces from the floor stringers protrude beyond part 25. Look here at the modernized double track truss bridge. Notice how those floor stringers, they stop and they completely terminate at the end floor beam. This is the experience that I was talking about in my mind. Looking back here at the Arch Pratt deck, you can see why I made the mistake that I did, thinking that the bridge, the floor stringers rather, would terminate just like the deck of the modernized double track truss bridge. You kind of have to put some of the experience that you may have out of your mind when putting this bridge together, only for this particular step, because it may get you into hot water like it just did for me. Now, as I just showed you guys those digitally enhanced photos that I was able to blow up on my tablet, you guys can see what those pieces look like in much greater detail because I was able to enhance them using my tablet and using some additional software. But just looking at the instruction manual naked without any magnification, you're not going to see those things. And that's where my issue is with Walthers, and more specifically the design of the instruction manual and how they laid out the instructions. Lastly, when concerning the deck, no matter how you do it, whether you do it my way or the chronological way set out by the instruction manual, make sure that when you allow this to dry, that everything is straight and level. Because when you go to affix this to your side truss assemblies, you don't want things tilted or kilted in the wrong directions. You want this thing to be straight and level. Also, it may be just a bit smarter to build two halves and then put them together once the two halves are completed. That way you only have to join up in the very middle. All right, moving on to step 2, which is actually step 5 in the instruction manual. And in step 2, we have to glue in these stringer laterals. You have 14 of them, 7 per side. It's part number 29. These stringer laterals go in between your vertical stringers that we just got done gluing for the deck. And these little pieces, as you guys can see here, they just plug right into the center of the gap that are essentially supports for the track. They don't really support anything. They're just kind of there as a visual, and it's a nice visual. But they kind of go down. They have like little openings where they kind of come together, and they just kind of slide right on those ridges that are on the insides of those stringers that we just got done putting together. Not that it really matters, but it's going to make it glue down a lot easier. Using the tweezers, you guys can see how I was able to kind of line those up on those ridges. Make sure you get them down there, put a little dot of glue, and get it done. All right, all painted up now. Moving on to step 3. Step 3 is actually going to be step 1 in the instruction manual. And essentially, we're just going to take our now completed deck and glue it to our side truss assemblies. If we go back a little bit and think about earlier back in the video, remember those pinholes that you guys can see here on the side of the truss assembly? Remember the deck when we were talking about parts 25 and 26? This is part 26. See those little pins on the very end of parts 26? Each piece, each part 26 and each of parts 25, they all have these little tiny pins on the very end that poke into the side truss assembly. So now the 2 completed truss assemblies are both female, and the deck now acts as the male, and they plug into each other to create the bridge. All right, back to the hopscotch. Another reason why I did it that way is because I know I had enough space to allow the bridge to set up and dry in such a fashion that would keep it straight. Now, if you're making a bridge like this, I'm going to guess you have enough space, so you should be able to do it this way too. So essentially, I just put the bridge down, put that toilet paper in between the gap between the truss assemblies to make sure that the gap stayed true. And also I clamped it down on the ends, and I used my battle shaker cans to add some weight so that the glue and everything would stay pressed together, but also keep it from deforming while trying to allow the glue to set up and dry. All right, moving into final assembly, we just got to get in a lot of the nicer, finer detail parts for the bridge, okay? So in step 1 of the final assembly, it's actually step 2 in the instruction manual. And here in step 1 for final assembly, we're attaching the bottom X bracing. The bottom X bracing has these little mounting pins, as you guys can see right here. You shouldn't be able to cut them off, but when you go ahead and mount these to the bridge, on those bottom cords, if we think back to the beginning of the video, those bottom cords have these little holes drilled in that are pre-drilled, if you will. Those mounting pins on the X bracing plug right into the mounting, or those little holes, those mounting holes on the bottom of the bottom cords or gusset plates, which is however you want to call them. But nevertheless, you got to plug those in. It's kind of tight and kind of hard to see, but essentially be careful, go slow, take your time. They're very flexible, so it should be pretty forgiving, but obviously don't snap them. All right, so moving on to step 2 in the final assembly, which is step 6 in the instructions. This one's pretty straightforward. You have 2 different sizes, 31 large and 32 small for your top laterals. Don't confuse them. Make sure you put them where they need to go. It's very straightforward. Giving you a quick depiction of the 2 different sizes. As you can see, it's not that much of a difference, so make sure you keep your pieces isolated so that you know which 2 pieces are which. Real quick, when you guys go to cut these top laterals out of the sprue, be sure that you do not cut the very ends of them off. Take a look at this. These top laterals have a little bit like of a pin that protrudes off of them. You should be able to see that there. Do not cut those little ends off. Those plug into the face of the side truss assemblies that we looked at earlier. It allows them to line up straight and line up correctly. All right, now moving on to step 3, which is number 7, 7 in the instruction manual. Now, when you get to step 3, be careful here because you have 2 different sizes and 2 different sets of top struts. Looking at the instruction manual, part 7, they categorize them by end struts, parts number 35 and 36, and your top center struts, parts 33 and 34. All right, so now that you guys understand the whole top strut deal, when you guys insert these pieces inside of one another, 33 and 34, 35 into 36, do not glue those center areas. The instructions call that you only place a little droplet of glue where those tabs contact the top cords at the side truss assemblies. Very quickly, if you guys remember how the X bracing affixed on the Pratt deck truss bridge, it's very similar to this style here. All right, folks, so step 4, which is number 8 on the instruction manual. Right here, we're talking the end posts, part number 5, and the top cover plates, parts number 44. Not a whole lot to talk about on this one. It's very self-explanatory, especially the way that I'm depicting it. I did use some clamps here to kind of help everything to line up correctly. But the one thing that I will say, as you guys can kind of see here, is if you have any flash that's remaining on the bridge from the side truss assemblies from the way back at the very beginning of this video, it will show here because these end posts will not lay flush on the bridge. All right, and one last thing, I did not cover bridge shoes in this video because with the kit, one nice thing that they do is they give you about 4 different size bridge shoes. I couldn't add those shoes in the video because I had to make sure that the bridge would line up with that modernized double track truss bridge. And that is it, good people. That is the build of this Walthers CornerStone double track arched Pratt Truss bridge. I hope you guys did enjoy this installment on the build series. Speaking of the build series, this bridge is number 11 out of 11. If you haven't seen the other 4 bridges that came before this one, please check those out. You have the 70-foot and the 90-foot through that girder bridge. You also have the 109-foot Pratt deck truss bridge, and then of course, as you guys can see here, you have the modernized double track truss bridge as well. There should be a little poker at the top right corner for each one of those videos. Also, since you guys made it this far, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and please share your ideas and your thoughts in that comment section. Also, if you guys are looking for some more sneak peeks and some little insight to the layout, I do a lot of things on my Instagram channel over there at Flash Jones Trains. And that's all I got for you. So until next time, everybody, be blessed, stay safe, and of course, keep it on the rails. Alrighty, I got a little bit of B-roll for you. So watch that. And of course, I will see you on the next one. I'm out. Mission accomplished.